The 13th of December, we go on with the work of Media Center Ukraine. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko, and now we'll have the presentation of Art and History project, Flowers of Victory. Let me present and introduce the participants of our discussion: Oleksandr Kuklyshyn, project manager and head of the NGO Green Stripe; Kostiantyn Cherniavskyi, chairman of the National Union of Artists of Ukraine, honored artist of Ukraine; and Mamuka Mamulashvili, soldier, founder and commander of the Georgian National Legion. Hello. Hello. Oleksandr, could you please tell more about this project? How there was this idea born, what's its objective and the main concept? Thank you so much for the opportunity to tell about this important social project. Its idea, in fact, was even in our minds in 2014 and 15 when we saw Russian crimes in anti-terroristic operation area, and we start with grads which Russia used to shoot against the Svitlodar hospital. The doctor then died, and the international media said that it's impossible that Russia may shoot against us. And it's not possible that they do that against hospitals, that they can do that. So today, it's a great honor that we are joined with Mamuka, a Georgian Legion representative who can tell a lot about other crimes. So seeing that in 2015, I was amazed to see the surprises of Ukrainians, because today we also had shelling in Kiev. We need to remember that 3 days ago in Zaporizhia, another hospital was shelled. 11 people died, 22 persons were traumatized, and it's also the terrorist act of Russia. And when we communicate, let me repeat, with the foreigners, they say, no, it's impossible. Maybe something is wrong. It cannot be like that. And it is going for the 3rd year in a row, thanks to the National Union of Artists and Sculptors, who've also showed their initiative and created this art project. They will tell more details on that. I'm working in the medical sphere, so I can see the consequences of these actions for the people, for the civilians. So it turns out that in the beginning of the full-scale invasion from Belarus, there was the infantry vehicle coming to our territory, and it was destroyed. So the General Staff of the Armed Forces took everything what they could, and as there was the detonation, we used it as a sculpture for an art project. So this combat vehicle was shooting against citizens, civilians. So we'd like to show to the world who the Russians are, what they do with the civilians. We'd like to show that also through art, through the artists, to show the creation of such a sculpture which will be shown in the museums of Europe, and show the historical events. As you can see, those are the fragments, and we will tell more about that later, and my colleagues will add to that. So what did the project start with? When the courageous woman from Cherniavskyi city said that the Russians should put the raw seeds into their pockets, because then, when they die, the seeds will grow and grow into sunflowers. The pockets of the occupiers who came to such countries as Ukraine and Georgia. This was the concept, the idea of the sculpture, the sunflowers which will grow through the infantry vehicle, through the metal, as you can see it in front of your own eyes. We would like to say that the metal fragments, which were officially given to us by the doctors from the Children's Hospital, Ohmedit, is the metal from the toxicology building, where the children with dialysis were living. This is the pipe which gave the oxygen, and this pipe should be shown for the Europeans. And the sculptor and the union are working so that it could be shown in the art and documented in history in the museum. We would like to show also to the world what Russia is and why it is important to support Ukraine, Georgia and other countries in their fight. Because Russia is not stopping in front of anything. It does not have any prohibitions or bans. This is the terrorist country. We are also collecting the fragments. Today we have the colleagues from Vinnytsia who gave the metal fragments from Vinnytsia center of the city, Yuri and Volodymyr, who were there during the shelling. A little girl, Lisa, died, so the sculptor is working on these fragments as well. We'd like to tell that anybody who would like to and anybody who was under shelling can join the project. You can send us your fragment of metal for free, which will be used in the sculpture. And this is the people's project. It's non-commercial. It's the social project. Undoubtedly, we ask you to join this project. Please subscribe to our social media and tell more about your stories of those crimes. It's important to show them to the world. For us, Ukrainians and our brethren from Georgia, it is obvious, but the world doesn't want to see that. And I'd like to drive your attention that Russia is investing lots of money into discrimination. My colleagues will add to that, into different exhibitions, which through art they are showing as if it's not that obvious. There can be different narratives through propaganda. This is how Russians are trying to achieve that. So it's very important that this evidence will go to Europe, and thanks to the National Union of Artists and Sculptors, it will be shown. My colleagues will tell more about that, but we are documenting that and showing the world for the future generations of Ukrainians and Europeans who Russians are. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksandr. Kostiantyn, could you please tell more about this sculpture, how it is created and how much time this process is taking, which regions these elements are given for the sculpture? Good day, esteemed presentees. Today it's a great honor for me to be here because, as it was mentioned by Oleksandr, this topic should be mentioned in any country of the world, in the civilized country of the world, I mean. So before moving to the more detailed presentation of this project, I would like to tell a couple of words that the National Union of Artists of Ukraine has started since spring 2022 its work, because the first assignment or objective which Russia had is not only physical destroying of Ukraine and Ukrainians, but also destroying Ukrainian culture and art, Ukrainian spirituality. Because let us remember this huge number of mutilated museums, libraries, picture galleries, theaters. They were trying to destroy Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian art, Ukrainian word, Ukrainian book, Ukrainian history, and Ukrainian culture. That is why one of the first steps for the artists of the whole Ukraine, I'd like to emphasize, is that rather quickly we united all the artists' communities of the whole country, from the east to the west, from the north to the south, as the first days of full-scale invasion, obviously, first were not about art. First, we needed to evacuate from the most dangerous cities all of our colleagues. And then, since May, when the situation was more or less understandable, the first project of the National Union of Artists was Indomitable Mariupol. Why Mariupol city? Because this city used to play, is playing, and will play a very important role in my life. Because since 2018, my family was living between two houses in Kyiv and Mariupol. I was working in Mariupol. I used to be the head of the National Academy part in Mariupol city. And till 2022, I was living between two houses. I was connecting my life with this project Mariupol Indomitable, which we conducted in Gdansk in Poland, as Gdansk is the sister city of Mariupol city. So eventually this exhibition was expanded, and we wanted to show the whole world both the tragedy and the pride for our city. During these times, this exhibition, and now it is traveling all over Europe. It was presented in other Polish cities, in the Baltic countries, in Germany. Now we are preparing the presentation in Greece, because everybody knows historically that Mariupol is a Greek city. And besides that, since the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, we've polished and crystallized the city of indomitable heroic cities, because in Ukraine every city is a heroic city. There used to be exhibitions for Kherson city, Kherson region. It was born in 2022 when Kherson used to be under occupation. There was the presentation in the central house of an artist, and eventually this exhibition, as the security situation allowed to create openings with the involvement of the big number of people, then only in the west of Ukraine, all of the bigger cities like Lutsk, Ternopil, Vinnytsia, Lviv, Uzhhorod had this event, hosted this exhibition, and eventually we brought it abroad to Luxembourg, where they had the charitable auction, and 100% of the money was sent to support the refugees and IDPs from Kherson region, because the National Union of Artists of Ukraine, besides the art activity, is supporting, first of all, the armed forces of Ukraine and the refugees and IDPs, the internally displaced persons, first and foremost the children. In the end of 2022, we've created the International Charitable Foundation. With the help of the foreign partners in Ukraine, a huge number of humanitarian goods was provided. And as of today, we go on with this process. Just last week, we've conducted an event in Verkhodniprovsk city, where we can find refugees from Donetsk, from Donbass, in particular Mirnograd community. We conducted an event. The children of Donbass are making drawings for the armed forces of Ukraine. This event, in fact, influenced and stirred, if I may say so, not only Mirnograd community, but other communities of Donbass. And in January, we are planning tours to the children, as the children of Donbass, as of today, are studying online. They have really a very limited circle of live communication. Let us come closer to the project of Flowers of Victory. How does this project embed into your map of projects? I'd like to mention that this idea of the use of the remnants of military equipment was founded in the end of 2022 in Kharkiv, where we, in spite of the resistance from the regional council because of the danger, but thanks to the city mayor, Mr. Igor Terekhov, who gave us a permission, we had an exhibition, Indomitable Kharkiv, which presented for the first time a huge installation with the remnants of the adversary's equipment and remnants of missiles, fragments. So when this idea was taken by the artists, the sculptors, in particular Bohdan Mazur, the people's artist of Ukraine, who is the author, who is directly the one who is an idea inspirer of this project. There were interesting elements, and which obstacles we faced, as this military infantry vehicle was rather big. We had to choose the location where we could work on this project. We considered several options, but because of the security situation, we could have certain issues, because the location would be obvious, it could be seen. Still, taking into account all of the obstacles, the project is going on. An important component is that this social project is totally non-commercial in this case. Our objective is not to earn money. First and foremost, this composition, this sculpture work should be showing all of the horrors which already took place, and the most important thing, our sacred faith in our victory, to show the civilized countries and to involve civilized countries. Because now we've got lots of conversations that the world is exhausted and tired to help, that it is tired of the war, that we need to stop that to make some of the negotiations. In this case, the art is the weapon, the art which serves our country, which is fighting, and art is fighting together with the armed forces of Ukraine. As far as I understand, the work on the sculpture is going on. When are we expecting to finalize the works, and where will this sculpture go? Do you have any deals with any countries? I think that more details will be given by Oleksandr. Yes, thank you. This is really a very reasonable question we are expecting, and we are trying. We were hoping that the war is over, but unfortunately it is going on. And obviously we are open to collect any of the fragments. We will not ignore it. The sculpture will be living. Coming back to your question, which regions collected the fragments? We collecting the fragments from all of the regions. We ask the people to be involved. Today, Transcarpathia was shelled and Cherniavskyi region were shelled. Remote regions, but it is important to show that the war concerns everyone. If we speak about the countries, we have certain deals. We are confirming the agreements with the National Union of Artists, so that 10 EU countries showed the countries first of all for the foreigners. You can see that the toy or this missile which is flying against the citizens, the people, and killing everyone without any selection of the victim, it is important to show it for the EU. Yes, it is going on, but we are still asking people to be involved. It is for free. It's a social project. Everybody can become the participant of this sculpture. We have the plan to introduce certain extracts to register where each fragment came from. So we will register the fragment from the Georgian Legion as well, because it's important to show later so that every single person could later find the fragment and become a participant in the sculpture. And if we speak about the beginning of the project, the infantry fighting vehicle which was destroyed by our armed forces, it's also the victory of the whole Ukrainian people. Every fragment, when we can see even children crowdfunding for the armed forces and the elderly who are giving away their pension, this is the victory of the whole Ukrainian people. This sculpture is the symbol of not of our victory, but of our partners and friends who are together with us. Maybe you will give the floor to the colleague. Yes, thank you. I wanted to speak to Mamuka now. The Georgian people were really one of the first who joined Ukraine and began protecting Ukraine after the beginning of the Russian invasion. We are incredibly grateful for that. Could you please tell what's the role of the Georgian Legion in this art project and how were you involved in it? Hello, thank you for the invitation. I will have to speak Russian. I do apologize for that. The Georgian Legion was one of the first military formations, voluntary ones, which was created and came to Ukraine to protect Ukrainians. In this case, I would like to say that Russian propaganda, unfortunately, is much stronger in other countries than we can imagine. We faced that for multiple times, unfortunately. We faced the propaganda against Georgian Legion, against the volunteers who are helping for Ukraine to fight. The representatives of Ukrainian culture, the representatives of Ukrainian art are the people who can give the very worthy repulsion by these projects against Russian propaganda. With such projects like this, we need to remind our Western friends and partners every day how strong the influence of Russian propaganda is and how they don't want to show what really is taking place in Ukraine. From our behalf, we also brought a fragment of aviation bomb which was thrown or hit Sumy region against the citizens, against the usual people, not only military. I wouldn't say that the Western world doesn't know that. Unfortunately, hypocrisy of many politicians led to the situation that this conflict in Ukraine, even in Ukraine, in the center of Europe, is partially ignored. They say that they are tired. I think it's not affordable to say when thousands and dozens of thousands of Ukrainians are dying every day. Ukraine itself is not speaking about exhaustion, protecting, in fact, whole Europe from Russian influence. Moreover, the Western politicians, the Western countries don't have the right to speak about exhaustion because Ukraine is protecting democracy today. Ukraine is protecting the principles which unfortunately were not protected by our Western strategic partners themselves. And physically, as of the moment, is done just by Ukraine. We are just helping, I mean the Georgian Legion. What's also important to promote these projects, through the art, to show all the truth, what is really taking place in Ukraine. I'm almost sure that common people don't know the reality of Ukraine for 90%. They cannot go here, they cannot visit frontline areas, and to see the truth. And many provocators are coming, the representatives of the Western countries, but in fact they are agents of the special services of Russia, and they are totally conducting a different way of propaganda. They are trying to excuse Russia. This influence of Russian propaganda exists. It exists in the European countries, it exists in the United States of America, and we all need to fight that whatever we can with. And the Georgian Legion, besides the physical fight against Russian aggressor, is trying to take part in such projects. Because, let me repeat, we also faced propaganda against the Georgian Legion and volunteers, and altogether we understand what that is. Thank you, Mamuka. Oleksandr, let me come back to you. You've mentioned that approximately 10 European countries will see this sculpture. What about Ukrainian cities? Where will the Ukrainians be able to see it? Well, you know, we have certain communications with the city mayors. Today we should have the representatives from Dnipro city. They prepared their fragments, but unfortunately they couldn't join us. Really, we are planning the presentation of the project in the regions. We will definitely arrive to different cities and communicate with the population. The installation of the sculpture is planned in Kyiv city. We have several locations. We go on with public discussions, but still, unfortunately, this war and decommunization as well have created a huge field where the sculpture can be installed because through the art, because of the art, our country, and not only our country, through culture, through many sculptures, Ukraine was shown not in the best way possible, because they showed the statehood of our country. And this is the challenge for us, where it can be installed. Several locations in the center of Kiev are offered, so it's important for us to install this sculpture in the center of Kiev. We are working on that, so that it could remind, we understand that any war is over, and definitely it will be over with our victory. It should remind the price which is paid by Ukrainians, paid by the representatives of volunteers, the formations and the armed forces of Ukraine now already who are protecting us. I know that many representatives of Georgia died for Ukraine. They gave their lives for our peace. And we need to remember that and to give this legacy to the future generations. This sculpture will be the reminder of that. But as my colleague mentioned before, Mamuka, it's so important to show it to the Europeans. It is obvious for me. I do apologize for my words. I understand everything about the politicians who sometimes are bought by Russians. But there is the population of Europe who has to see the truth. And with these installations in Europe, we need to conduct this influence. First of all, our strategic objective, and we work with the National Union of Artists on that. Obviously, it is still in progress, but it is important for us to show it in Germany, because we need missiles of Taurus. We understand how important is the political representative in Germany, but also we have the population, the Germans, who are supporting Ukraine a lot. So it's important to work with them. I'd like to remind you that Slovakia, in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, was one of our biggest partners. And when the government changed in this country, instead of our friend, we got, in fact, the representative of Russia, which, in fact, blocks of the borders. And it's incredibly important for us to work with the population. It's important to explain to them what easy money of Russians brings, because they buy lots of representatives of other countries with their own ways of simple or easy or cheap energy resources. So it's important for us to emphasize on the countries which are the key ones for us. Undoubtedly, it will be difficult to change the perspective of Hungary, but some of the countries are our real strategic partners who just forgot, as Mamuka said, or don't want to notice it. We need to remind them, and also to remind them about other countries, that the territory of Georgia is occupied, that the territory of Moldova is occupied, where different special services are working, and we are neighboring with them. We have a common border which poses threat for us. It's important for us to show with this project the counter-propaganda, because the fragments given to us is the living evidence. This missile is the Russian missile which flew here. I don't know what else we can show. Maybe we shouldn't even say a word, because we are showing the broken fates of the people, of the children, of the elderly, because Russian propaganda is permanently announcing some crazy speeches in the United Nations, which is hard even to imagine, but unfortunately we can see that it is done using the huge sums of money, and it is working. So it's so important for us. I'm grateful to the colleagues who found the opportunity to join and to show the whole world the price, what we are paying to deter Russia. So when approximately this project is finalized, we are planning to do that in a year. We approximately have a year, so that in the beginning of autumn, the sculpture next year was having a tour. We faced some of the obstacles. As far as I know, such projects never existed, so that we could use the military equipment of the adversary. For a year and a half, we had to register all the documents, because these are trophies. It is not registered, it is weapons. So we faced such complications, but thanks to the support of the National Union of Artists and Sculptors and our background, as we are working since 2016, We are working with the medical community, working with our defenders, but it's hard for us to see the consequences of this war. So we'd like such wars like in Ukraine or Georgia never to take place. We need to stop Russia, and this sculpture needs to go on. Including the chips which are used in the missiles exported from our partner countries. When we dismantle such missiles, we can see thousands of those spare parts, and we need to remind the companies who are also responsible for killing of Ukrainians. This sculpture is demonstrative. We also have the plan to work with the lawyers who need to register all of that properly, because we are working officially. We are getting these fragments officially, so it is important for us to show that they are going on. We are working along the bureaucratic way, which is hard for us, but we need to understand that it's important for the future, documenting of these fragments. Thanks to the Georgian Legion, how do you plan to solve the logistics issue? Because Kostiantyn mentioned that this infantry fighting vehicle is huge and heavy. And another point are the elements of military equipment. It will be hard to bring it abroad. Yes, we're working on that. We have a cool partner, Nova Poshta. So far, they are supporting us logistically in the context of the fragments themselves. They provide free delivery. We also connected with some of the logistics companies. A bit of exclusive information for you. We have many trophies, and it was not an issue to take a Russian tank, but a huge issue is to transport the Russian tank, because we need certain cranes. We wanted to tell about this IFV. It is totally now preserved. It is not that heavy, in fact. As of the volume, it is as a tank. But its weight is up to 5 tons. It is not that heavy. It's not that hard from the perspective of transportation of the metal construction. We've discussed that with our logistics experts, and it's not that hard to put it onto the truck, just a usual truck. So we consider several options. Now we plan and approve this route. The main objective is to create the sculpture. So we appeal and urge the Ukrainians who have been affected by the war, please join us. We'd like to save your stories and to preserve them. We'd like to show the world the importance of each of those stories. Very often in the media we can see resonant stories about shelling where people are dying, but very often there is the information that Kherson was shelled, 2 people died, or a family died. So unfortunately, for more than 2 years of the full-scale invasion, we don't see that in the news anymore. And those are broken fates of the people. We'd like every single person to join. Again, I emphasize it's a social project. So we'd like to show the world that we are not politicians. We are not into political or any other activity. It's important for us to show the open societal project, to show it to the world, to show that those are real fates of the people, which are killed by Russia every day, and inactivity of Europe. And when Europe does not provide us weapons for the protection, we are speaking about protection, we are not speaking about offensive. This is the responsibility which is borne by Europe as well. Thank you, Oleksandr, and I thank our guests that you joined such an initiative. I hope that it will work, and as many countries as possible will see the outcome of these enormous work and the victims which Ukraine and Ukrainians are suffering for this freedom and independence. This was the Art and History Project presentation of Flowers of Ukraine. Media Center of Ukraine will go on with its work on Monday. Follow us. Thank you for staying with us.